This is the Business of Social podcast powered by SCN Digital. I'm your host, David Brickley. We are coming to you once again to try to help everybody during this time of need and provide some knowledge, some innovation, some creativity as we all look to serve our audiences during this unprecedented time. Producer Will, how are we feeling?
I'm good. We're remote, wrapping up, I think, week 2 of this or day 10, but I'm good.
It looks like you're cold. You have a hoodie, a hat. So you see that American flag in the background?
Yeah, a couple flags. I got a Pods flag, a Cubs flag, and then obviously the Ireland flag.
Over there at the Will Kelly household.
Yes. My house gets about 1 hour of sun a day, so it's internal temp's about 50 degrees in here at all times.
Well, stay warm, stay healthy.
All
right, we are episode 53, I believe.
Correct.
So break it down for me. What 53s do we have?
Not many. I think Daryl Dawkins is going to take the cake here.
Here's a fun fact. This is going to be the Daryl Dawkins podcast. I don't care who else you say, because I actually judged the dunk contest with them out in LA. It was like the Sprite All-Star Weekend. They had something at Universal Studios. Yeah, believe it or not, I actually judged the dunk contest with the great Daryl Dawkins. Chocolate Thunder.
The Chocolate Thunder podcast.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I wanted to bring on Blake Lawrence from Open Doors. We have spoken with him before, Will. But, I've had a lot of sports clients in the TV space and the sports team space reach out to me and say, how do we now program our channels? How do we use our athletes? We have this unprecedented access to athletes right now, and they're open to do things because they're bored and they're kind of stirring just like all of us are right now during this crazy time. So I wanted to bring Blake on because he's one of those guys that really understands athletes, works with all different types of athletes through his company Open Doors, and just wanted to have a conversation with him. I think him and I kind of, hopefully brainstorming and kind of talking organically over this podcast may be able to help a lot of folks. And I want to send this link out to some clients and some different people that have asked me for ideas and brainstorm sessions. But hopefully this will be valuable to all the listeners. So from Open Doors, once again, my buddy, Blake Lawrence. Blake, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. Strange times across the industry, and I'm excited to catch up on your world, what you've seen, what we've seen. So I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I thought of you right away because I think, I do want to get into athletes and sports because I think I kind of been screaming from the mountaintops certain things about athletes and content. And I think you're another one of those guys that definitely has those same sentiments. But I want to start with, how are you feeling emotionally and physically? Are you used to working from home? I'm not a big work from home guy, so I just love to hear how you're doing.
I'm used to working remote somewhere, but never not home, right? It's usually a hotel room on the road. But it's New York City's in an interesting spot right now. Got the fiance and I are sharing a space, and I've learned to limit my calls so that we can both keep our sanity, sharing a small spot. She's in the other room right now. And, but I'm thankful that we kind of self-quarantined for the last week, and now all the rules have made the move the right time.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear from your standpoint, with Open Doors. I mean, I'm assuming you're probably getting calls that you never thought you would get. I mean, because now for the first time ever, and this is why I wanted to have you on the show, we've always had a problem with access to athletes, right? Access to talent. They don't have time. They're not going to do that. Don't even pitch it to them. And now we have these guys, much like you and I, are quarantined. We have NBA players that can't leave their home for 14 days at least. And now they're almost asking like, hey, I'm bored. I'd love to do something. So what a difference. And I guess from your standpoint, where you sit, what have you personally done to attack that? And what has your colleagues kind of been innovating around to make sure that, could provide some escapism for people right now?
Yeah, and sports has always been a great escape, right? Actually, literally watching sports. But what happens when the games stop and you realize that sports can still be an escape? It's not necessarily the teams and the contest. It's more on the players, right? So this is, I believe, could be the start of a new era in terms of athlete and fan relationships, because they're forced to understand the importance of this connection because most athletes have to wait until retirement, right, to realize that this fan relationship is all they have left. But guys are in the middle of their prime, and as they emerge on the other side of this, they're going to realize, wow, I should probably really invest in this. So guys are getting creative and ways to stay connected, and it's fun to talk about this different content types you see coming out of players' phones and in their feed right now. It's entertaining.
Yeah, I think I was on a I guess webinar with Tagboard, and kind of what I was saying is, who's going to be the athlete? I'm sure you agree that's going to step into the plate and host a daily noon body weight workout series, or the Friday game night. Because I'm sure you agree, what we're missing as sports fans right now, and it's live event fans overall, is that appointment view television. And I think that's so important to have something to look forward to, whether it be a movie night, a game night, and maybe you and I following, like I mentioned, an Anthony Davis daily workout on Instagram Live. But would love to hear from you if you think that's a direction and kind of what you've been, I guess, giving in terms of consulting or advice during this unprecedented time.
Yeah, I would say that it's about, as you mentioned in the first question and kind of allude to it here, is that there's more freedom for athletes to try something they wouldn't simply because they didn't have time or energy before. And so, right before this, I was on the call with our partners at the MLBPA, and they're literally talking about puzzles. I mean, because there are the puzzle industry right now is skyrocketing because people are sitting at home and they realize quickly that is a pastime that can keep you engaged. And when are you ever going to sit down and do a puzzle, and especially an athlete? But trying to combine the fact that we're all in the same situation somewhere across the country, and athletes are people too, and providing them these concepts that during the season, as it's going on, you wouldn't even consider asking an athlete to video themselves completing a puzzle and racing their teammates.
Yeah, and I've noticed the Toronto Raptors have done a series as well about how bored are you, and just FaceTiming each other and things like that, which I think is innovative, and they're doing a great job as well. What's your background in athlete gaming? We've seen what Devin Booker has done and things like that, but how big do you think the Twitch part of this thing is, or just live streaming these guys as gamers, and kind of some athletes being able to make a staple or kind of be the face of that during this time?
Yeah, I think it might have been Peter Alonso, maybe, for the Mets. There's one MLB player that tweeted out, hey, if this gets 50K retweets, I'll download MLB The Show and play, stars across the league. And it's up there. I don't know if they got to 50,000 retweets or not, but that's unsolicited promotion of a MLB The Show. So they got all of that. But the interesting thing is that most of these guys are gamers, right? They are turning to video games to entertain themselves, but they're not all streamers. And so that was another thing, is how do you educate or equip these guys with the resource about watching the player and their reactions and their personality kind of come to life. So they got to have both of those things. And most athletes aren't used to that type of setup. So how do we get them involved with the gaming and esports? Because people do want to tune in.
Yeah. And that's what I think is that point of view television that, people watch Ninja every single day and they look forward to it. And it's something that, again, provides an escapism. And I think that's what these athletes have the opportunity to do. I want to, we work with a lot of sports teams, a lot of sports networks, and I'm on a lot of calls as well about, what do we do during this time? And, like you said, streaming's going up, social consumption's going up, TV ratings are going up. People are inside quarantined and they want to be entertained. So I know you're in the same boat as I'm sure you've been asked the same question, with Open Doors and the ability to, share video and get that in the hands. But if you're ahead of a brand at a sports team right now, where is your mind going right now in terms of, okay, we don't have sports, but now what?
I think it's about understanding that the best part of sports are those moments of connections that happen when you're in the stands or when you're watching on television or watching on a stream. are those moments. And there's a lot of moments that are sitting on a shelf somewhere that if you can go back and relive those moments, help your fans stay connected to that place. And, I think the NFL is doing a decent job on their Instagram channel of, just saying top 10 plays from Travis Kelce last year, top 10 plays from the Seahawks, or whatever biggest defensive stops of the year. And it's, kind of using that same script of let's just give some archive content. But when, of course, I'm going to be biased towards what if the athletes were able to get access to those moments and start to share them with their audience. So I think reliving, restructuring some of those key moments from the past can, again, connect the fans in a different way. And then it's not just about the team channel. It's not just about the league channel, but what about the players themselves? Could they be a distribution engine? There's a kicker in the XFL. I was just looking at it yesterday. He's got one of the highest performing posts on Twitter, and it's Taylor Russolino for the Battlehawks. And the guy's got 1,800 followers, David, and this video of him kicking, right? This video of just his highlights as a kicker in the XFL has 166,000 views. It's
Jeez.
it's clips of his kicks in the XFL. Wow. That's how much fans are looking for this type of content from players, and I think that's what we would emphasize for our partners, are getting those moments into the hands of the athletes so they can keep the fans connected.
Yeah, I think that's what I've kind of said too. Like, you're always trying to be genuine to the audience. You're always trying to program your channels to what the audience wants and what the brand loyalist or the follower wants. And if you strip out the live game content, like you said, they still want to know what's going on behind the scenes. There's nothing better than to pull back that velvet curtain, if you will, and see what's going on. I saw LeBron James do a Q&A. Like you said, I've seen a lot of, top 10 highlights. I've seen a lot of like March Madness brackets, like best moments. And I think, just being creative and innovative during this time, because put yourself in the seat of the fan. I think I've been trying to take really seriously. It's up to us as these, as managers of these brands, to provide positivity and a little bit of light, a little bit of escapism, because it's tough right now, man. It's kind of a dark time for a lot of people. And I think you and I are lucky enough. You and I are lucky enough to work in social and digital and more of the tech space, and the restaurant industry and the hotel industry. I mean, it's so awful. It's so bad. But I think those of you that are listening, I think people that are in Blake and I's shoes, we're lucky, man. And I think we should take that for granted and say, we're one of the lucky ones. We owe it to ourselves and our audience to like buckle down and figure out how to attack this thing. And really just goes down to, how are we going to program our channels during this time?
Yeah. And I would say, in terms of one of the, I'll throw a question back at you, David, is when you're thinking about not necessarily, your clients, but your team, right? How do you communicate to your team how to leverage these moments to maybe emphasize a certain type of like, what are you doing on your side to communicate as a leader in sports or in any business? What are you saying to your team?
I'm being very honest. I said, guys, like, we're one of the lucky ones. Like, we have to battle like crazy, and this is like almost like a wartime situation, right? Where, we need to, a lot of our family members, a lot of our friends, they don't have this luxury. They're laid off and they're in unemployment and they're scared and they got rent coming up, and it's tough, but we have the ability to roll our sleeves up and try to attack this and be able to march forward. So that's one big thing. And then also supporting each other. I think, mental health right now is something that's really important. There's a lot of people that need humans around them for energy. I think, like you and I. So how can we do more, happy hours and Zoom hangouts and conversations like these to kind of get back to normalcy a little bit? But yeah, there's so many industries and so many friends, and I'm sure you have business owner friends as well out there that are just being hit so hard that I think it'd be really sad to not do everything we can to take advantage of being in an industry that we can actually affect change in.
Yeah, and that's the message that we've shared and similar, is that we're weathering the storm, and that's to everybody, right? And what you do during these times has a tremendous impact on how you feel on the other side when you emerge. How did you handle yourself? Did you come together, or did you fall apart? And I think that the more that you can align this as a we situation, more so than ever, that like this is of course, everyone's thinking about, I got to protect me, I got to stay healthy for me or my family. But beyond that, you're not just doing it for yourself, you're doing it for the safety and protection of others. Same thing for the way that you work, right? Is that, the responsibility is at an all-time high when you're in the office with your peers. You're going to hold yourself accountable because they're holding you accountable. What happens when you're not in that environment? That's really defining of who you are. And so I think that's a big emphasis for any leader, and something that Audie and I at Open Doors have really tried to communicate, is that we're at home, but it's not vacation, right? We got some things to do, and even more so, the challenges are different, and we never have all faced them together. But what we do now will determine how strong we are on the other side.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree. And I've been saying a lot, like, there's two options. You can be paralyzed by the moment and curl up in a ball and feel sorry for yourself, or you can attack this thing head on. And there's going to be brands, there's going to be people that are being innovative. I read a story about a bar which you can't serve drinks anymore, but they're serving $25 pre-made margarita mix, and they give you a roll of toilet paper if you come down and pick it up. Like, I mean, it sounds silly, but it's like, who's going to like try things and just at least attempt, and who's going to say, you know what, man, we own a bar, we're done, we're screwed, let's go home and call it a day. So yeah, I implore people in social and digital, like, now's not only the time to be innovative, but also now's the time to kind of be that beacon of hope, I think, for a lot of those folks that are sitting on the couch and scared right now.
Yeah, I agree. And the innovation is there, that I can imagine that there are certain sports programs, college, pro, that have doubled down on the importance of digital media revenue, and they are able to weather the storm in a different way than those that have not. And that's where it's strange to think, if you're in the live event industry, which is what sports is, in the entertainment industry, what happens if the live events go away? You got to have something to rely on, something to fall back on. And the most would say that digital media is still a live event world, but I would say that the best media companies on the planet are about creating a presence that isn't dependent on live events, but more so on an evergreen connection or strong brand and relationship. That Netflix isn't in a bad place right now, I can tell you that, and that's the investment in original content that can be viewed for hours on end, and for decades in the future. So that type of investment in a digital asset. So,
yeah. And that's what I was going to say too. I mean, not to get too deep into it, but you and I have been really, really big about these athletes monetizing their social audience, right? And then those eyeballs, and a lot of them haven't taken that seriously. And I think that's something that you and I see a big opening for. But yeah, what happens when the game tech stop? And not to say that we can all prepare for a coronavirus situation, but I do think on the other side of this, we're going to see some great innovation, some great, I think, athletes that end up being more personal and interacting with their audience and doing the puzzle series or the workouts, whether they're in season or not wait till they're in retirement, right? But also, I mean, listen, like you and I have kind of been trying to scream for the mountaintops. When you have attention and when you have an effect for change, like, you need to make sure you're monetizing all that stuff.
Right.
And that's what a lot of guys aren't doing. And I think the guys that have done that are much better off than the folks that haven't.
I was fortunate. I was down at spring training in Arizona with Trevor Bauer and Momentum and his media company. And the conversations we had there, I was talking to him, and he's like, if you had to explain to a guy why it's important to invest in social media as an athlete, how would you do it? And I said, most athletes, they get to the professional level, they get a financial advisor. And that financial advisor is there to protect your bank account, right? Because when
diversify your assets,
right? When all is said and done, you're gonna look and say, I got my bank account, right? And then I said, well, in today's environment, would you consider a brand advisor or a social media advisor? Because when all is said and done, you've got your bank account, but you also have your follower account, right? So you have a financial advisor take care of the bank account, a brand advisor take care of the follower account. Because when the game stopped, like that's all you have left. And right now, these guys are realizing that, well, shoot, we may not even have anything in the bank account. So where am I going to grow? And so those are the things that the bank account, follower account, that's really all athletes will have once their career's done. And now is the time to realize the importance of having both taken care of and having, if you are financially savvy, then manage your own money. If you're social media savvy, then manage your own social. But if you're not, there's people out there that can help. And I think that's guys like you and platforms like Open Doors that can make it easy. But now is the time to realize that it's just as important to have the follower account up as the bank account up.
Totally agree. So, like I said, I'm trying to. There's a lot of negatives that we can focus on, obviously, with the news going on right now in the different industries. But to try to, focus on the positives for the interest of good energy and good vibes.
Yeah.
When we get on the other side of this, what do you think changes in a good way? I think one thing I'm thinking of is obviously the innovation. I think from an athlete standpoint, being more cognizant of their audience and making sure they're monetizing and diversifying their assets, if that makes sense. But we know streaming is going up right now, social consumption is going up, food deliveries are going up, things like that. But on the other side of this thing in our industry, what do you think the positives that we'll get out of this whole thing?
I would say the humanization of sports is something that you have moments where you realize, oh wait, this is bigger than the jersey, and I think that we've had the Kobe, experience as sports fans this year. And that was to realize, oh wow, like this is how big of an impact sports can have on our culture. But now more than ever that it's not just one sport, one legend, but it's everyone realizing that, hey, there's people behind these teams, right? I think that when the first thing that Mark Cuban said was, who's going to take care of all these staff members, and the people at the arena? That was a human experience right there. He wasn't worried about who's going to manage the what are our media rights deals going to look like. That is what most conversations in sports are about a lot. But today people are realizing that it's bigger than the game. It's about all the people that are impacted by one game being put on at all levels. And when that stops, what happens to the people behind the scenes?
And so also how go ahead, sorry.
No, I think that's the part that I think is that
and really it made me understand just how big in our culture obviously sports is for people like you and I think it's part of our air and water that we need, right, to kind of stay sane. But to your point, the leadership of a Mark Cuban, of Adam Silver saying, you know what, we're done, we're suspending the season. I mean, that was the moment, and I think we look back at that moment and probably thank him and thank that situation from happening because we were able to get to it as quick as possible. But once sports are so important, March Madness I talked about, that's not just like a sports fan being Blake or alums of Nebraska and San Diego State, and we can't wait to see our team. Like that's a human culture thing in our country. Like everybody's a part of an office bracket. Everybody knows and looks forward to March Madness. And once you cut that off, I think everybody's like, oh shit, this is serious. So it's funny, I think, how sports, I think, woke everybody up and shook everybody like, no, don't get it twisted. Like this is real. Keep your butt at home and let's get through this as humans, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting because sports is entertainment at its core, and the entertainment industry is rocked if you take away live events and things slow down. But it's going the positives on the other side of this are how much people are going to realize that this is such a key part of our culture. Is something that you said earlier, escapism, like that sports is an escape from reality for most folks. And that's a great thing because once it comes back, that it's going to be good to get out of this reality right now. because of the challenges that come with just the anxiety of being in it consistently. So again, mental health and sports is a savior for many folks from the stresses that life can bring, and we can't wait for it to be back.
And I've even brought it up, in 9/11 when George W. threw out the first pitch at the Yankee game. I mean, that was a very emotional, like, okay, as Americans, we're going to be okay. We're going to get through this one foot in front of the other. And I'm looking forward to that moment, hopefully soon, because I think just the perspective and the gratitude of, like, it's so cool to be able to go to a basketball game and watch basketball. It's so cool to be able to go out to dinner and hang out with my friends. Like, I think hopefully, although this is tough times, like, that perspective by the majority of us will stay paramount.
Yep. No, you're right. It's going to be interesting. I think our partners are doing a good job of communicating what their plans are and being cognizant, from the league level to the team level, of letting the fan base focus on what is important, not trying to turn this into a capitalistic approach of, everyone is trying to find a way to keep their business going, but there's a way to do it that is respectful and knowing your place, though, right? And that's where, again, I like to say that we're here to support, and sports as a whole is here to support, and we can't wait to turn it back on. But there are more serious things out there than
100%.
My bottom line and our bottom line matters a lot to me and to our team. We're going to try and do that, but doing it in a way where it's enacting positive change in a kind of a strange environment. So that's for business owners and for sports team owners, is kind of knowing where you fit and trying to weather the storm together.
Yeah, the way I've worded it is like the absolute wrong word. I've heard people say that it makes my skin crawl, is capitalize. Like, you don't want to use that word. I think the one word I've kind of came back to is, how do we now serve our fans? How do we now serve our audience in a way that we can be, again, supportive, escapism, positivity? I think it's amazing. I don't think people looked at it this way, but what content can do, what programming your channels the right way can do, what being innovative with an athlete can do to put a smile on someone's face right now. And that's, if I could put one smile on somebody's face, that's I'll go to bed knowing that I did something right. So
yeah, it's interesting too. I had a conversation this week about how the creator and influencer community and how that is thriving in these moments, and how athletes are so far, they're so distant from what an actual YouTube star or influencer creator is, in terms of those are some of the best content creators and entertainers on the planet. Athletes are entertaining because of what they do on the court, but the connection is interesting too, because imagine if the creator and influencer community, if their content stopped, like if the funniest dude you follow on Instagram, on YouTube, if their content just got turned off for some reason, do you still care about them? Right? Or you think about that. It's like, I think that Trevor Wallace is hilarious. I think he's one of the funny. Trey Kennedy, like, these guys are so damn funny. But if they stop making content, then I don't know if I'm still connected to them. But the opposite is true for athletes, is that right now their content stopped, like their flow. And all we want is to get closer to them. Like, it's a strange thing.
Yeah.
That's why the athlete fan relationship is stronger than you can imagine. Is that once your favorite actor stops making movies, you find a new actor. But once your favorite player stops playing games, they're still your favorite player. I think that's an interesting thing in our culture, is how well connected we are to athletes, because they are the foundation of our sports fandom in the first place. And moments like this kind of, I think, shed light on that we do care what athletes are doing, even if they're not playing the sport that they're playing.
Yeah, and I'll share this with you, because I think with people listening, maybe to get their mindset and the mind of the fan. With me, growing up in the LA area, being a diehard Kobe fan and working with him, I this sounds terrible to say, but I shed more tears during that moment than some family members that have passed away, because I felt like I knew Kobe better than my cousin who passed away, tragically 10 years ago, because I saw every moment in every interview, and I met him and I shook his hand, and you follow these athletes as if they're your family, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's part of the connection, where I got 97 text messages from people saying, "How are you doing? I'm thinking about you." The same way if a family member passed away, because they knew the connection I had with him.
Right.
And that's something important for all of us as working in athletics and working in sports teams. Like, there's fans out there that have that same connection. So to your point, that's why they want to know what's going on. They want to work out with these guys. They want to, see what their puzzle possibilities are, because, they feel like they're a part of their family. And it's a crazy, I never really realized it until I went to that moment, but it's amazing how you feel like these people are part of your family.
Yep, they are. And that's what today, but they always kind of have this certain spot in your mind where they're there to entertain. Again, the escapism, but then there's the human element that makes it so real. I think that's where you see the athletes when their photos show up in your feed or their videos. You slow your scroll and it's like, hey, what's Trevor Bauer up to, right? And
I think the key word is, as a fan, you're extremely invested in that athlete, and when you're invested in something, you want to know all the details.
Yeah, and in a strange way, you feel as if that you have an impact on.
Yeah,
like your fandom is going to will them into more success in their career. And what's interesting is that this is deep into the weeds in this, if you think about it. And is the fact is, when you support a fan, or when you support an athlete as a fan, the more success they have, the more you're invested in them, right? So in a way, it feels as if your fandom has willed them to success, but in fact, it's simply because they continue to succeed, you to continue to invest, but it just brings you stronger together. And that's why when you root for a team and they start to win, your connection only gets deeper.
Yeah.
Again, it's strange to think that, the first time that you get a jersey, of an athlete for your birthday or for, a holiday, you toss
That's
it
your
on.
guy.
That's your guy.
Yeah.
And whatever happens from there forward, that connection is real. And today's athletes have way more channels, way more platforms than ever before to strengthen that connection. And they've got more time today than they ever have. So I think those that understand that they can keep that connection alive and how important it is for their future are doubling down on social. And we're going to share some data, and I'll get it over to you too. On what we're seeing on what before and after the pauses, the suspensions of seasons, the activity of athletes on social, to see who's finding this time as an opportunity and others that are shutting down along with their sports team and season.
Yeah, and I think, one thing I want to mention too is female athletes as well. I think it's important. Sometimes they don't get the light on SportsCenter. They may not get the primetime slot on ESPN, but now it's all the eyeballs are on the same platforms, right? With Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and where all these different athletes are posting. So I really am looking forward to as well some different female athletes that you and I are very familiar with, but maybe the general public at large are not, and how they can use this time to connect with people and introduce yourself to a new audience. So that way, when this thing starts back up again, those folks are invested. And I think, we'll hopefully see ratings and just support for female athletics skyrocket as well.
Yeah. I was looking at, I know that if you're listening, you can't see it, but if you're watching, this is the video that came to mind. Kira Leslie, she's got just a couple thousand followers, but it's her, dribbling, in her garage. It's got, almost 6,000 views, but she's, just in her full uniform, her full WNBA uniform, entertaining the fans. I think that's something that you see that the feed is going to start to be filled with more athlete-driven content. And it's going to form connections today that are going to last. Once the seasons start back up again, it's going to be fun to see these athletes perform again. But you're going to have a stronger connection to them when that game is happening because of what they do today. And that's what we're emphasizing across our partners and the athletes we work with.
Well, man, I really appreciate the time today. I know it's been probably a crazy week for you as we record this on a Friday, March 20th, just for context. But, a lot of my clients, a lot of people have reached out to me and said, what do I do with my athletes? What can I ask them to do? What can we do to program our channels and create content from scratch now that we don't have the macro content that is live sports to program our channels with. So I'm looking forward to sharing this with my network and hopefully yours as well. And I'm sure you're the same way. I'm always open to a brainstorm or strategy session and just like help people however we can, since you and I are kind of more in the weeds on this stuff than others.
Yeah, 100%. I'm here to help, and you and I could do this all day. I'm always thankful, Dave. In this time, want to understand different tips and tricks. Like we're posting things out on the Open Doors channel, just what we see that's succeeding on social, and always open to a phone call, whether it's in these moments or any time in the future. What do I do with all these athletes running around? David, you can help, we can help. So I appreciate you again for bringing me on.
Of course, man. Well, make sure mentally, physically, emotionally, man, I hope you're doing well. Reach out if you need anything on our side. And thank you so much for dropping some knowledge and helping the listeners out.
Perfect. Thanks, Dave.
All right. Thank you so much to Blake Lawrence for joining us on the program. Some really good stuff there, Will. I think, towards the end, we got really to the point. I didn't know it was going to get there, but just how you have to remember, like, how invested the fan is with these athletes. I took myself back to Kobe and how invested I was with him and how that whole thing worked out during my childhood and even, into adulthood. And as leaders of brands and sports teams and TV networks, you have to understand that although the games have stopped, like Blake said, the investment does not go away.
I think you made a great point too. Like, these athletes have to retire until they realize how much free time they have. And now they're like, man, is this what it's going to be like when I'm not playing anymore? So I have to figure out now what I'm going to do for the future. Great point by him.
And the goal, too, is not to undermine the severity of what's happening. And people are losing their jobs and industries don't have a choice but to lay people off. And it's terrible what's happening right now. But we're trying to come at this from a point of, okay, we're in this together as marketers, as people that oversee brands. And how can we serve our audiences? The main thing I keep on saying, and hopefully it's resonating. Again, I don't want to take away from how serious the situation we're going through as a global population. But the fact that we still have, again, like I told Blake, we're one of the lucky ones. Although we work in sports, we still have an ability to reach out to our fans digitally and socially. And how can we best serve and provide that positivity and escapism? So that'll be the thing I keep on preaching. Thank you so much to Blake Lawrence over at Open Doors. If I can connect anybody in my network or any listener to him, please let me know. But it's been episode 53. Thank you to Will Kelly. I'm still thinking Dave Ferker every podcast. I mean, you got to thank
consistency.
For the show. And thanks, Will, for being flexible and find a way to digitally get this whole thing out to the people. So again, episode 53. This has been another edition of the Business Social Podcast powered by SEM Digital.